Hi, welcome back to the Kids of the King podcast. I'm here with some special guests, first time ever. So why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, I'm Elena, the other Elena. And
Hey, I'm Markas.
yeah, so
Just Markas, just
Just
Elena.
Markas.
We don't do last names here.
Yeah, we don't want y'all stalking us.
Go with the government.
Exactly. The government will follow us and track us down because of so many views on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about contentment, jealousy, envy, all that stuff. But before we do, I'll pray and then we'll get into it.
All right.
So, Father, we thank you for this time we have. I just pray that you would teach us something new. I pray that for us speaking, that it would just be your power in the words that we say. I pray that the listener would be able to have something practical that they can take away, that they wouldn't just hear the words and then do nothing about it, but that it would stir them to action. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so what do y'all think it means to be content?
I think that there is like a really shallow definition, and then there's like a more biblical definition. But definitely being happy with what you have. You know, that's kind of the simple thing, like, you know, being happy, being content. And then also I was thinking, like, not needing more. Because I think that when people say, like, you know, you're not content with what you have, it's because you think you need something else. Like, you could be content and you could still, like, want something else. Like, you could want more money or something, but if you're not depending on it and, like, needing it. So, yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think it's just being content, like she said, being happy and being joyful where you are in life at that current moment. But to me, something that's helped me is to not be content with my relationship with Christ, wanting more in my relationship with Christ, being happy where I am, but just seeing and realizing I can have more, that there's so much more to just have a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, I think that, honestly, contentment, as we're talking about, when you're not content with, like, the things of this world, that's when, that's a problem. Like, you don't deserve anything here on earth. Like, we deserve death, you know? But, yeah, I think that definitely what Marcus said, like, you always want to seek more in your relationship with Christ. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good. It's like being content with what you have in the sense of like your stuff,
Yeah.
but not being content with like how little we know of God and
Yeah.
our spiritual walk. Because if we're content in our Christianity, then it's we're not going to really move as fast as if we're constantly seeking and never satisfied with how much we know of God.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of contentment, there's like jealousy, envy, and I guess coveting. So how would y'all like define those terms?
When I first heard that we were like doing the episode on contentment and like jealousy and coveting, I was like, is there really a difference between jealousy and coveting? And so, well, I talked with my dad about it. I was like, is there a difference? And he kind of just explained it sort of as jealousy is being protective of what is yours, sort of, and like having a fear that it's going to be taken away. Like, people will often describe, like, God is a jealous God because when we give our attention to something other than him, more than we give attention to him, then he gets jealous because he deserves that attention. And then coveting is often like when you just want something that isn't yours, like, you know, you're coveting or being envious of somebody else's, like, car or something. But both of those things can be used, or coveting is mainly used in a bad connotation. Jealousy can also be in a bad connotation too, so that's kind of...
Yeah. I mean, she stole words, but that's pretty much exactly it. I mean, coveting is something that you see that you wish you had. Like, there's a lot of people in my life that's gotten really good opportunities to do multitudes of different things. And I was wishing I could do that. I was sitting and laying in my bed, just wanting that, and sitting, laying in that covetous spirit. That's coveting, wanting what someone else has. But jealousy is the thought that someone else is stealing what you have already, I guess.
And you can get wrapped up in that as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely just a borderline, because God is a jealous God, right? But we can't, as humans, bask in our jealousy, because we're humans, so very easily can our jealousy turn into coveting. So.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say that, like, when I was like looking like these different things up, I was like, they all are kind of similar.
Yeah.
I think when like we talk about jealousy and God, that's like kind of like one of the only like pure ways we can talk about jealousy, because for the most part, like there's very little that is like actually ours. I guess like a good like picture of jealousy is like in marriage, when two people are together, they can be jealous for one another because they have that commitment. And that's like how God uses it, how he's jealous for us. But in terms of like envy and like covetousness, it's wanting something and not being satisfied, not being content.
That was definitely a big thing, because jealousy, it's okay if you like deserve that, because God deserves everything, like he owns everything. But then we can be jealous of stuff when we really, like you said, like we don't deserve anything. I have highlighted, I have First Timothy 6:7, for we brought nothing into the world and we cannot take anything out of the world. Like, we deserve nothing. We literally deserve death, and like we betrayed God. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big factor that plays into jealousy. That our jealousy is generally not good, because we think that we deserve things that we don't.
Yeah, kind of like the idea that we feel entitled to something.
Yeah.
And like you said, the only thing that we've earned, Romans says, is death.
It's death.
That's what we have like worked for.
Yeah.
By nature, we're children of wrath. Like, what a motivation to wake up in the morning and think about. But
hey, I'm a child of wrath.
Let's go, enemy of God. But what are some things that y'all think our generation, specifically like Gen Z or even younger Gen A, what are some things that we tend to like covet and envy?
A lot of stuff.
There's the shallow answer. Like, when I was a kid, my best friend had a bunch of Legos, and I wanted them. But then there's the, I guess, more serious ones. When, especially with social media is a huge destructive thing that Satan uses. It's the vehicle that Satan uses to easily destroy our lives, and even our confidence. But when we compare ourselves to someone else and we don't see the full picture of what they're going through, but all we see is the good stuff. Like someone having a nice wife, a nice girlfriend, a nice car, a nice job, whatever it is. So it's just those little things that can easily destroy our lives. But
yeah, definitely. And like social media in this day and age, people just put out the best part of themselves a lot of times. I think that's definitely something that's emerged within the last 10 years or so. But we see that and it's like, why don't I have that? And then that just gets you into a really negative cycle of just wanting more, and you're never stopping to look at what you do have and be like, hey, I actually have a pretty great life. And like, that person they might be Elon Musk and have millions of dollars or whatever, but like, I'm never hungry, I have a roof over my head, and that's all I need to live. Like, why do I need more? Because in reality, like, those people that have a lot of money, I'm sure, I can't speak 100% sure because I'm not them, but I'm sure that they're not content either. Elon Musk again, like, he's always trying to produce more stuff, and everything. So really, contentment is the key to it's very linked to being happy. And I think that social media has killed that, and that's the cause of a lot of depression. That's a whole different topic, but.
Yeah, I think I've heard the phrase, like, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a verse or if that's just a phrase. But we do see it a lot on social media.
Yeah.
Like, someone puts the best out, and so, of course, you want, like, the best of everyone's life. But, like you said, that's not how everyone's life is. And it will lead us to, like, wanting something that's, like, unrealistic.
Right.
But I think as Christians, there needs to be, like, a whole different mindset to that. So why is it important to be content?
I think that a big factor in that, honestly, is that when we're not content, it's basically telling God that what he's given us is not enough. I think that, you could say all of these other things like, when you're content, you're happy. But really, we shouldn't be aiming to be content for ourselves. We should be content because that's a worshipful attitude. It's adapting a mindset of, I'm going to go with whatever God's given me because he knows what's best for me. And I'm not going to try to take more, or I'm not going to try to need more, because what he's given me is enough, and it's more than enough, honestly. And I think that it's so important to be content, because once you've realized this is connected to this whole other topic, and I think y'all did an episode on this, but once you realize how low you actually are, it makes everything that God has given you seem so much bigger and so much more amazing. And it really is so important to your relationship with God, because it allows you to just be even more awestruck by who he is, and just praise him even more for everything that he has given you, and by not focusing on what you don't have. So.
Yeah. I was going to say something like that, but there's the flip side that when we're coveting people, what they have, that can steal our joy, right? Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy, right? And coveting someone can steal our time from God. It can kill our confidence and our joy, and can just destroy our lives, destroy our relationships. I heard that in a John Bevere podcast. He used that phrase, but I think it's very applicable here. When we're coveting someone, like if we're at church and we're worship, we're in service, right? Morning service. And we're all we can think of is just, oh man, that guy, he has that, I want that, and that can steal our joy, steal our worship from God,
and steal our attention. I was struggling with words.
Yeah, and just as y'all said that, it made me think about how anti-contentment our culture is, because it's all about us.
Yeah.
And you see it in commercials. It's
you
need this, and it's
need this to
why
be
do
a
I
better
need
person?
Why do I need the best iPhone when I have the second best iPhone?
Yeah.
Get these shoes and you'll have more friends.
It's that doesn't even make any sense. But
sure.
It's all over advertisement. Just you need this, and if you don't have it, you're not gonna be happy. And it's also so ingrained in our culture that sometimes we don't realize it. That it's we need to have, the whole meal at McDonald's instead of just a sandwich.
Exactly. In our culture, it's just, you keep getting, okay, you got that job promotion, start aiming for the next job promotion. And it's just really, it's you keep putting your, almost your hope in a future, occurrence that always just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you're never happy, and it's sad and stuff, so.
Yeah, and you also notice it in celebrities and stuff where maybe they started out of poverty, and so they started climbing the ladder until they got to the top, and they're I still want more, but there's nowhere to go. And so you see that idea of satisfaction, people never being satisfied. And I think everyone faces that. I think of the woman at the well who comes to the well, and she's looking for satisfaction. She doesn't tell Jesus that, but she's gone from relationship to relationship to relationship, and never been satisfied. And Jesus says I'm the living water.
Yeah. She's looking for the material water, the temporary, but he's actually providing something else.
Yeah, eternal water.
Eternal water.
Yeah, that sounded weird, but yeah, that's what it is. But anything else on that? Why is contentment important for Christians?
It's just, honestly, I think that, we covered it. It helps you have a more worshipful attitude, reverent attitude, and then also it does give you joy. Contentment is so heavily linked to just being at peace too, because I think that, we were saying, this culture is very restless. You keep wanting more and more, and there's very few people who are actually at peace with where they are right now, and I think that that's because they're not content you have to be content, and you have to realize that you have so much. I think that it's something that I've done before, is I just like kind of wake up and I list the tiny things that you don't ever think about that you do have, that we take for granted, that are actually so essential to your everyday life. Like, God, thank you that the sun's still shining today, because God could take away the sun if he wanted to. Like, he could do anything. Yeah. And so it's something that we're like, oh yeah, we deserve that. Like, we need that because, you know, if the sun went out, then we would all die. But God doesn't owe that to us. Like, we owe everything to him. On the flip side, so it's just like waking up and being like, oh my goodness, I'm still alive. My brother's still alive. My cat's still alive. Like, I have carpet and I have like 5 different options of shoes to choose from. Like, that's actually crazy. And then when you look at that and you realize that you have so much there, then it just makes you a much happier person and much more at peace with your life, because you know that God's always got you. God's always provided more than enough. And so, like, why would he ever stop doing that in the future? And it's really essential to living a life of contentment and peace, or contentment is essential to living a life of contentment. Anyways, y'all know what I mean.
Yeah. I would just say I would not be content if I had a cat. Like, get that thing out of my house.
Guys, cats are the best. I love my cat.
There's this like Psalm, I would say it's my favorite Psalm, Psalm 63. And verse 5, it says, I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. And that resonates with me, because it's like, when you get a good meal, you're satisfied. It's like, you don't want any more.
Exactly.
And I just read a verse in Acts. It's like I think it's Acts 20 or something. And it's the only line from Jesus that's not in the Gospels. And he says it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I thought that was so powerful, because like, we always think that in order to be satisfied, we need to like get. But the Bible talks about how if we want to be satisfied, you need to like give, which is so backwards. And you see like some of the happiest people are people that are living like modest lives, but it's because they've like given stuff.
Yeah. I found this verse. Elena was telling me about it in the car, but so in the first letter that Paul wrote to Timothy, 1 Timothy 6, beginning in verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge the people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. So, yeah, one would think that Jesus would talk about more about hell or temptation or whatever, but the most talked about thing that Jesus talked about, 11 out of his 39 parables was on money. And I think that's a huge thing we need to remember, that coveting other people's finances and what they have, that can be a snare, that can be a trap that the devil's setting for us. And we can easily fall into that. And sometimes it's really difficult to get out of. I know for me, coveting for 5 years straight, being in deep depression, that was really difficult to get out of. It took me 5 years, but it took me that long because I didn't seek help. I didn't seek anyone else to help me for 5 straight years. So
yeah, and it's easy to think that like when we just have more, we'll be content. Or when we just have more, we'll start like giving. But I think about there was like a widow who had only like 2 pennies, and she like gave that away. And I have to imagine she wasn't like the person that was like super like, you know, envious and covetous of other people, because even what she had, she gave away. And she wasn't like, once I get to $1 million, I'll like start giving away. She was like, I'll give away right now.
Or it wasn't like, she's like, if I give this away, then it's like good karma.
You know?
But no, she like gave it away knowing I could very well die from this. And I think that's it's a good lesson to learn from. And then, you know, Jesus looked at her and said, like, she's blessed. Like, he looked at all of the other people who gave out of their wealth, gave out of their surplus. And they were giving knowing, you know, it's not giving everything to God, but...
Yeah, and one verse that I really love is, well, I think a lot of people like this verse, but it's Philippians 4:13.
Yeah.
But I think some people forget the verse before that. It's
Yeah.
like, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And it's like we read the like Philippians 4:13 and put it on t-shirts and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's about like being content in God, being content with like what we have. So yeah,
Definitely.
how can we learn to be more content? Paul says he has the secret. What do y'all think
He
it
has
is?
the secret.
Um,
Go ahead.
I think it's through experience. As tough as that sounds, but I like when you think about Job, he lost everything, and he learned to be content with what he has, because he lost everything. And there's a saying, but we don't truly know what we have until it's taken away. So I think it's through experience that our eyes are open and we can see just how blessed we are, and coveting is it's a stupid trap that we shouldn't be worrying about. So
Yeah. I think definitely that like experience, you're not going to be fully content when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
But then in some ways that you are, as you see more things that you can get and everything. But I really think that, and I'm glad that you asked this question, because I was about to be like, yeah, it's kind of hard you can say, oh yeah, I'm jealous, like that's stealing my joy, but like how to be content, that's actually really hard. And I think it's so hard because pride is connected to contentment. And I think that it's a huge troubleshoot. Being proud is a huge troubleshoot for being content, because that the root of it, being jealous or coveting something else and wanting more, really comes from the idea of I deserve it, and that's pride. So I think that being more content is linked with humbling ourselves, and we should really just learn to not make everything centered around ourselves, but center everything around God, because he deserves it, like we were saying, like he can righteously be jealous because he deserves everything. But God, really, if we focus on God and keep our eyes towards him and keep that eternal perspective of, what am I really living for, then everything else just seems so much less important. And that's just going to make you so much more content. Just you're filling yourself up with things that are going to last forever, and not just things of this world.
Yeah.
Like the living water, like Andres just said, or Andre. Yeah. But yeah, definitely just humbling ourselves.
Yeah. And but I just had a thought, and I went through some sermon notes from my pastor a while ago. He says, just as love covers a multitude of sins, a lack of love will cause a multitude of sins. When we covet someone else's property, we have a lack of love, right? And in that lack of love, we will probably fall into sin. That's a guarantee. We will fall into sin. And I think that's why Jesus, in the parables that he talks about finances, and a lot about coveting what other people have. They're all warnings. And I think we need to heed to those warnings. Fancy word, but just remembering that when we have that in our mindset, that's where our mindset's going to be all the time. We're not going to be able to effectively love and share the gospel, what we're called to do, right?
Like what's important to you? Where are your priorities?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think what you're saying, like money, a lot of times money is just, in the history, money is linked to happiness. And also, like, a lot of things that Jesus talked about was, like, your relationships, especially, like, romantic ones, like, with your wife and your husband and stuff. And, like, that's also something that people link with happiness. And a lot nowadays, it's like, if you don't have a significant other, then you're not significant yourself. And then, like, if you're not rich, then who are you to be talking in public or something, Like, people actively shame you for those sorts of things. And so really you gotta like check yourself. Be like, what's important to me?
Yeah, and I love what y'all both said. It's like, I think wanting to be happy like isn't like a bad thing. I think God put that in us. But if we're not satisfied in God, then we're gonna try to be satisfied in something else.
Yeah.
And that's what we
and
see.
God's the only thing that's satisfied.
Yeah, that's like what we see in the Garden of Eden. Right? It's like they're not satisfied with God.
You're right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I heard, John Piper says that like sin is what we do when we're not satisfied with God, and so you see that like how they're not satisfied, and so they go to trying their own way, eating a delicious fruit, but really it represents pride, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, Elena.
It's the root. Yeah. They say pride is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And to some extent, I do agree with that. I think that really the thing that happened in the garden was just they thought that they were bigger than God. Like, you know, I know what's best. And that just causes everything else. It's like, oh, well, once you start thinking like that, then you just disregard God, and then you're like, well, I can do whatever I want. And you really can't. It's going to get you a bad place every single time. So, yeah. It was definitely a good...
So, looking at those ideas about like pride and being content through all circumstances, what are some practical things that we can do to learn to be more content?
I think, like I said earlier, something that helped me is honestly just going through all the stuff that you have, like just thinking about it, like sitting down and being like, actually, yeah, I have enough money, like, you know, talking about money, I don't need any more. Like, I mean, you don't want to get lazy off of that. I think there's a very delicate balance that you don't want to be like, oh, God's going to take care of me so I don't have to work. Like, you know, God says that, like, wake up, you sluggard, like, how long are you going to lie there? But I think definitely just going through everything and really just thanking God, just thanking him for everything. I know that kind of just sounds like, okay, that could just be a waste of your time, but once you get on a roll, you're like, actually, I have a lot of stuff. Like, I have a lot of things, I have a lot of friends, and you just feel so much better about yourself, honestly. I know that sounds bad, but after I go through all of the people who even just, like, were nice to me at school that day, I'm like, okay, thank you that person didn't shove me into the locker after I tripped and fell into them. Like, thank you. Thank you for the ground that I walk on, that it doesn't give out and, like, I get sucked into the... No, I'm kidding. But it really just... And see, like, once you start talking about that, you start, like, laughing at yourself, because you're like, why did I need that new iPhone in the first place? Like, I have so much, and it just kind of makes all of your discontentments seem ridiculous, honestly. And that was a big thing for me. Like, I do that still.
Yeah. Sometimes I just like to sit down and write. I have a journal, my prayer closet. I write things down. I usually write letters to God and thank him for what I have. Just writing it down so you have a visual representation of, I have this and God has given it to me. Maybe you know what your spiritual gift is, you know. Be glad in that, right?
Yeah.
And just, you know, writing it down, it's always helped me. So.
A big thing also is, like, fasting, I think. Taking stuff away from your life, like purposefully being like, okay, I'm going to fast from my phone, I'm not going to have it, and then that's going to teach you to be so much more content with what you have. Like, you know, you don't know what you have until it's gone. That's a Toby Mac song. You never know what you got till it's gone.
Copyright.
Oh, that's my bag. No, but, like, you know, fasting, and the Bible calls for us to fast. It doesn't have to be from food. It can be from, you know, whatever you hold more dear to you than God. Give that up, and just afterwards you're going to find that, for one, you can live without it. You will survive. But also, for two, you can be happy that you had it in the first place. Like, you can be like, hey, that was actually really... that was a blessing, and I didn't deserve that, because, like, you know. But after I find that after I fast, like, from my phone, and stuff, I just find myself more thankful that I have my phone, and a lot less entitled to it, because I realize that I don't need it, and I can do without it, but also that it is a blessing, that God's given to me. And, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I would recommend well, adding on to what you said, Marcus, about like the list is, I've heard it's good when you're facing some sort of temptation to like be blunt about like why you're facing it or like how you're facing it. So you could like write down, I am ungrateful and unsatisfied and uncontent, even though I have, and then write down like all the things you're thankful for. And then you're like, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, shoot. Oh. Like, and then another thing, this just really hit me this week, but looking at the world and seeing what other people have, I think it's like 1 billion people live under $1 a day. And then I think 2 billion people live under like $2 a day. And so now when I'm like looking at all I have, I'm like, that's like someone's like meal for a day.
Yeah.
And so it puts things into perspective because you're like, I have so much to be grateful for.
It's like when your mom, I'm sure that everybody's mom at some time has been like, you're throwing that food away, that could feed 10 children in Africa. Yeah. My mom said that so many times, but like there's a truth to that. I mean, at some level, like 2 broccoli pieces isn't gonna, but you know, her point is, you know, a lot of times people take for granted what they have, even at a young age. And so definitely what you said, just, you know, people live off of so much less.
Yeah.
We're blessed here in America.
Yeah, definitely. We're so blessed. And yeah, I hope this has helped y'all a little bit to learn to be more content. It's definitely not easy to be content, especially in our culture. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you take some of these practices into mind and apply them. If y'all have any topics you want to hear in future episodes, make sure to leave that in the comment section.
Leave that in the comment section, yeah.
But for now, that's about it. And never forget,